Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Let's Crack Real Math. My name is Viraaj, and in this video we'll be having a look at cumulative frequency and how we can solve for it in diagram form. So before I begin the video, please do not forget to perform an LSS, that is like, share and subscribe, and without wasting much time, let's begin. So before I go into examples, you know and I know that cumulative frequency in diagram form is usually a kind of question that you can only solve using a diagram. So that's why I will be going straight into examples, because without a diagram you can't really solve for cumulative frequency. But throughout the questions I will be explaining each part carefully. So let's have a look at the first example I have here. So quality of the grid may not be the best, but please cope. I think it's good enough. So the first question I have says 72 students, let's zoom in a bit, 72 students are given homework one evening. Okay, good to know. They're told to spend no more than 100 minutes completing their homework. Okay, the cumulative frequency diagram shows the number of minutes they spend. Okay, so the first thing you should always do is just have a good look at the graph, just see how it's plotted and what they want. As we can see on the y-axis here, we have the cumulative frequency. Cumulative frequency simply is the amount of people that have, simply the amount of students in this case, since it's 72. As you can see, the graph eventually plateaus at this point here on the graph, which is simply, I guess, 72 when you trace it back to the y-axis, because there are only 72 students. And the x-axis is simply the minutes, and they said that none of them should spend more than 100 minutes. So okay, that's that. Now let's have a look at question A. Question A states, or asks rather, how many students spent more than 48 minutes completing their homework? Okay, let's read it again. How many students spent more than, this is a key word here, more than 48 minutes completing their homework. So we will know the first thing to do is get 48 on our x-axis, which in this case is the minutes. So this is 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48. So it's round about there, because the units are increasing by 1 at the bottom. So now what you should do is simply take your ruler and draw and make a straight line to the graph, and then see where that line intercepts the graph, and then trace it back to the y-axis. So tracing this back to the y-axis, I will end up somewhere there. Yep, that looks pretty accurate, and that I think is okay. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. This is 16. Yep, that is 16. So now one mistake a bunch of students make is that they will now feel that this is the final answer because we took it to 48 and traced it up and got 16. But we need to pay more attention to the word more than, because what we have done is we've found the amount of students that spend okay, so sorry, as I was saying, what we've done here is that we've found the amount of students that take less than 48 minutes to complete their homework. All we need to find is the amount of students that take more than 48. If you remember, it said there are 72 students, and we found the amount of students that take less than 48. So all you have to do is simply do 72 minus 48. Minus 16, sorry, not 48. Why 16? Because 16 is the amount of, or the number of students that took less than 48, and we found that by using the graph. And 72 minus 16 is 56 students. So your answer is 56 students. Now when it comes to questions involving graphs, there is always a plus minus 1 rule. What that simply means is if your answer was 57, that can be also deemed correct. If it was 55, that can also be deemed correct. That's why plus minus 1, because when you are working in graphs, not everyone is meant to have the same exact answer. Some can have different answer based on their level of annotation on the graph. So on to the next part of the question. It says, I find the median. The median. Now, what is the median? Median is nothing but the half of the cumulative frequency, and then you drag that to the graph and get your time in minutes. So they said 72 students, so 72 divided by 2 is, if I'm not wrong, it's 36, but let's just confirm real quick. Okay, it is 36. As we know from the word median, median means the middle, and the exact half of 72 is 36. So now go to your cumulative frequency, y-axis, and find 36. So we know it's 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36 is somewhere there, round about that. So now trace your line from 36 all the way to the graph, intersect somewhere there, and trace it back down to the minutes, just somewhere there. And if that is 61, so that is 63. So the median is nothing but 63 min. Please make sure that you do include your units at all time. You can lose marks for not including the units of your answer. So all we did for the median was go to the half of the cumulative frequency, just divide your cumulative frequency or the final, or the frequency, which in this case was 72, divided by 2. Whatever you get, find that on the y-axis, trace it to the graph, and then trace it back to the x-axis, and you will find your answer. On to the next part, it says the interquartile range. Before I go into interquartile, there are two other things we need to know. We need to know the upper quartile and the lower quartile. The upper quartile is simply the 75th percentile, or simply in layman terms, the 75 percentage of the cumulative frequency. The lower quartile is the 25th percentile, or in layman, the 25th percentile, or the 25% of the cumulative frequency. So to find the interquartile range, all you do is use the upper minus the lower. So that means we need to find the upper first and the lower first. To get the upper, we need to find 75% of the cumulative frequency, and we are told that the cumulative frequency is 72, and to find 75, all we have to do is 75 over 100 times 72. And doing that in your calculator, you should get 54. If you are unaware of how I got that, please do watch my previous video on percentages. So we know that 75% of 72 is 54. So let's go to our y-axis, the cumulative frequency axis, and locate 54. 42, 44, 46, 48, 50, 52, 54, somewhere there. So trace it to the curve or the graph where it intercepts the graph, and then trace it back down towards the minutes axis, around about somewhere there. This is pretty much 72. Now we have the upper quartile, we now need to find the lower quartile, that's the 25th percentile. So to find 25% of 72, we do 25 over 100 times 72. So 25 divided by 100 times 72, and that is 18. So 18 is 25% of 72. So go to 18. We know 16 is there, so 18 is obviously somewhere here. Trace it to the graph, ends up somewhere here, and trace it back down, ends up somewhere here. that is 50. So we have 72 and 50, and in order to find the interquartile, as I said, you do upper minus the lower. Upper is 72, and the lower one is 50. So 72 minus 50 is nothing but 22. So the interquartile range is 22 minutes. As you can see, that's why this question had a bit more marks allocated to it, 2 marks. The median simply 1. So because you had to do more workings in this question. So on to the next example. Okay. So let's do this. It says the mass m grams of cornflakes in each of 200 boxes is recorded. Okay. The cumulative frequency diagram shows the results. So we have cumulative frequency on the y-axis, and on the x-axis we have mass in grams. So it says use the diagram to estimate the interquartile range. So as I said earlier, interquartile is simply upper quartile minus lower quartile. Upper quartile is 75% of the frequency, which in this case is 200. I'd say 200 boxes. So 75% of 200, if I'm not wrong, is 150. So go and you now need to find 150 on your y-axis. So we're at 144, 48, 152, somewhere there. May not be exact since I'm not physically hand on paper, but somewhere there, round about there, because the units on the y-axis are increasing by 4 per square unit. So now that we have our upper, let's trace it to the curve somewhere there, and then trace it back down to the x-axis. Okay, somewhere right there. And that is okay. We now need to see what the increments are for the x-axis. It's increasing by 0.2 every unit, so 504.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, 505, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. This is 505.8. Bit technical, this one. Okay, now we need to go for the lower quartile. The lower quartile is 25% of 200, which is a 50. So we look for 50. This is 44, 46, 48, 6, 52. So again, just may not be the most accurate. 50 somewhere there. Trace it to the curve again, somewhere right there. Okay, let's do that again. It's not straight. Okay. Okay, and trace it back down somewhere there. Yep, and this is 502.2, 0.4, 0.6 is 502.6. So let me just write that on 502.6. Let me just confirm that real quick. Yep, looks much like 502.6. And to find the interquartile, you simply take this and subtract it by this. So 505.8 minus 502.6, and doing that you should get 3.2. Again, since this is in decimals, this is most likely to be plus minus 0.2 because it is a bit technical, and this much discretion is allowed from examiners and markers of exam papers, but do make sure that you're as accurate as possible and not always relying on the plus minus 0.2. Now, next question says find the probability that a box chosen at random, okay, has a mass of 500 grams or less. It says, okay, find the probability that a box chosen at random has a mass of 500 grams or less. So first things first, go to 500 on the x-axis. So this 500, trace it up to the, okay, it's not much straight, let's do that again. So 500 is somewhere there. Just a second, guys. Okay, let's just take that looks pretty accurate. And then tracing it back to the y-axis, get it here, which is round about 16. And the question says find the probability that a box chosen at random has a mass of 500 grams or less, and that's exactly what we found, 500, and everything over here is less than 500. So we have 16, and as you know, probability is simply the number that we found over here, which is 16 over the total number of boxes, or the cumulative frequency, which in this case is 200 as stated here. So this is simply 16 over 200. Simplifying this, your answer can be 8 over 100, or you can write it in decimal form, which is 0.08. Both are correct answers. So on to the next example. Okay, it's a bit long, but we'll get through it. It says Jenna draws a cumulative frequency diagram show information about the scores of 500 people in a quiz. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, 500. So this is the cumulative frequency diagram. Score on the x-axis, cumulative frequency on the y-axis. Use the diagram to find the median score. So as I said, median is simply the half of the cumulative frequency, and I said 500. So 500 divided by 2 is 250. So go to your y-axis and locate 250. So this is 210, 220, 230, 240, 250, somewhere there. Yep, and then with a ruler and drawing a straight line, trace it to the curve or the graph. Around about somewhere there, and then trace it back down. Around about there. And this is 31, 32, 33, 34. So score is 34. Now I'm not sure what kind of units there will be for score, but we can just write 34 score. Next part asks me to find interquartile range. So again, interquartile range is nothing but upper quartile minus lower. So upper quartile is 75% of 500. So 75 over 100 times 500. And doing that in your calculator, you should get 375. So let's locate 375 on the y-axis. 310, 320, 330, 340, 350, 360, 370, 380. Okay, somewhere there. And not the most accurate, but it says an estimate somewhere there in the middle of those two. And then the lower quartile is 25 over 100 times 500. This is 350. And doing the one for lower quartile, you should get 125. So 125, 120, 120, and 30, somewhere there. Yep, around about somewhere there. Okay, so I'm going to start with the upper quartile. Let's draw a line from here. Trace it to the curve or the graph. Set somewhere there. And then trace it back down. Okay, it's not right. Somewhere there. Yep, so somewhere right there. and that is the upper quartile, which is, I think, most likely to be 40. Say 40. So let's go for the lower quartile. Lower quartile is at 125, which is somewhere around about there. So again, using your line, trace it. Again, not the most accurate on this, but when you are doing your own, please make it as accurate as possible, and then drag it down somewhere there. This is 21, 22, 23, 24. This is 24. And interquartile is upper quartile, 40 minus lower quartile, 24. And 40 minus 24 is nothing but 16. And again, you can just write score as you need it to be on the safe side. Next question says the 40th percentile. Now if you remember, I said the upper quartile is the 75th percentile. I said the lower quartile is 25th percentile. So what exactly is the 40th percentile? The 40th percentile is nothing but the 40th percent, or 40% of the frequency. They could ask 50th percentile, they could ask 93rd percentile, they could ask 26th percentile. It's just the percentage of that, so in this case 40% of the cumulative frequency. So to get 40% of 500, again you do 40 over 100 times 500. Doing the honors on this occasion, you should get 20. Wait just a second. 40 divided by 100 times 500. Sorry, you should get 200, not 20. 200. So 200 is right there. Trace it to the line, which is somewhere there, round about there, and then trace it back down, which is round about there. So I'm getting 30 as my answer. So for that question, the answer is 30. Again, to be on the safe side, you can write score. And the final question for this part of the question says the number of people who score 30 or less but more than 20. 30 or less but more than 20. So first things first, we should get to 20. Let's find 20 first. 20 is there, so tracing 20 up somewhere there. Okay, let's do that again. 20 is there. I'm tracing it back to the left. It's somewhere there, and that is 80 if I'm not wrong. Yep, that is 80. And it said more than 20 but 30 or less. So let's go to 30. Okay, we did that. We did for 30 basically, so because we did for 200 initially and we got 30, so if we do for 30 now we should get 200. So we have 80 and 200, and it's said to find number of people who score 30 or less but more than 20. We have more than 20 and we have less than 30, so all we have to do is just take the one that we got for 30, that's 200, and subtract it by the one we got for 20, which is 80. So 200 minus 80, and that gives 120. The answer for that is 120. Again, you can write score just to be on the safe side. And on to the final example for this question. Right, this one says during one day 48 people visited a museum. Okay, good to know. The length of time each person spent in the museum was recorded. Okay, the length of time. The results are shown on the cumulative frequency diagram. Time on the x-axis, cumulative frequency on the y-axis. Work out the median. Median is half of the cumulative frequency, so half of 48, not 50, because it's at 48 people. So half of 48 is 24. Go to your y-axis and locate 24. So 21, 22, 23, 24, somewhere there. So using your ruler and straight line, you can also draw a broken line, both can suffice. Trace it to the graph. From there you trace it back down, and tracing that back down, that is round about 4.1, I believe. Yep, the answer does look like it's 4.1 hours. You can write it like this, or you can convert it to 4 hours and how many minutes, but I prefer to keep it like this to keep it simple. Again, this could be maybe plus minus 0.1 or even 0.2. Since I am doing this on a digital form and the graph is not exactly the most clear and accurate, the answer could differ a bit, but the most important thing is the process of how you get the answer. Next question says 20th percentile. 20th percentile is nothing but the 20% 48. So 20 over 100 times 48. We do this to find 20% of 48. So doing the honors, you should get 9.6. Let's do that again to confirm. Yep, 9.6. So you now go to your cumulative frequency and you find 9.6. 9.6 is round about somewhere there, in between 9 and 10. Let's just say it's there. Trace it to the curve or the graph somewhere there and trace it back down right there, and that is 2.1, 2.2, 2.6, 2.7. It's between 2.6 and 2.7. We can write 2.65. Okay, it's right in between. Again, there will be a plus minus 0.2 maybe in this case, and that's the answer. Units are already included, so you don't need to write it again. Interquartile range is upper quartile minus lower quartile. Upper quartile is the 75% of the cumulative frequency, 75 over 100 times 48, and lower quartile is 25% of the cumulative frequency, that's times 48. So let's do that real quick. 75 divided by 100 times 48, that's 36. That's the upper quartile, and 25 divided by 100 times 48 again, that's 12. That's the lower quartile. Let's find 36 on our graph. 31, 32, 33, 34, 36 is there. Trace it to the graph or curve all the way, and then trace it back down. So you should get it somewhere there. And if I'm not wrong, that's around about 5.1. Now find the lower quartile. Oh, don't need that. Find the lower quartile. We need to go and find and trace 12. So let's go to the y-axis and locate 12. 12 is round about somewhere there, and dragging it and drawing a straight line with a ruler, insert the curve somewhere there and trace it back down. This looks very accurate to be 2.9. So we have 2.9 and 5.1, and we know that interquartile is simply 5.1 minus 2.9, and if you do that, 5.1 minus 2.9, that is simply 2.2. Right, 2.2 hours, or you can convert it to in the form of hours and minutes, which I think in this case would be 2 hours and 12 minutes, but you can leave your answer like this too, it's totally fine. On to the final part of the final example. It says we need to work out the probability that a person chosen at random spends 2 hours or less in the museum. So let's go to 2 on the x-axis because it's talking about hours. Draw a line from 2 to the curve. Again, not straight enough. So something like this, and trace it back to the y-axis. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it said the question said to find the probability that a person chosen at random spends 2 hours or less, and that is exactly what we found, because everything on this side of 2 is less than 2. So we have 5, and probability is the number you found over the total number of cumulative frequency, or number of people in this case, which is 48. So your answer is either 5 over 48, or if you want to write this in decimal form, I think this is 0.10. Let's just quickly check, somewhere around there. Yeah, 0.104. You can write 0.104, but since it's not a accurate decimal, it's a recurrent decimal, I would advise to write it in fraction form, 5/48. And that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Please do perform an LSS, that is like, share and subscribe. And thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice one.